The
And we are
broadcast
live.
is live.
Hello, everyone. Happy Easter. And I am dressed like an Easter egg today. I'm Troy Parkins, and I'm here with
Janna Colasso, and I am dressed as the Easter Bunny today.
I love that. You guys have matching glasses.
We do. We do. The better to see you with. Yes.
Yes. So, were you coloring Easter eggs today? Is
I
that
am actually, yeah, this is the first day that I've ever colored Easter eggs on Easter. You know, I was supposed to do it before. But,
okay?
But I didn't get around to it, so I'm doing them now. Yeah.
Oh. So I'm not attached to coloring eggs before or during or after. I saw in the store the other day they actually have colored eggs that you can buy. Doesn't that like take the fun out of coloring Easter eggs?
It does. And I have to admit that 2 weeks ago they had them. Ralph's had them. And I bought a dozen of those things, and I had some vague guilt that I was not dyeing them myself. And then I thought, oh, that's okay. I'm going to dye them later. And I bought them, and they weren't as good. There's something about you have to dye them yourself because it puts the happy Easter juju into the egg.
Yes.
Mass-produced dyed eggs are not the same.
I agree with you there.
However,
now,
they're better than no Easter eggs at all. So I'll try to get over my perfectionistic tendencies towards Easter eggs.
What do you think about plastic Easter eggs? I think these are whatever that is, BPD, BBD, whatever free eggs. So, there's that.
Yes, I have plastic eggs.
Cool.
And
I
save them and reuse them.
So we have a live viewer. If you want to ask a question, go into your chat down below, live chat, type it in, and your friendly hypnotherapist will answer your question. Okay, so HypnoTalk today. We debunked some myths the past few weeks. We talked about the benefits of hypnosis. One area that's come up that I believe your healing art really addresses is anxiety. And I know we've spoken in the past, there's a lot of your clients that come in around, they're talking through anxiety issues, they're having you support them in anxiety issues. I get a lot of questions on, okay, I heard that it could support in my spider phobia or my phobia of things that are man-made underneath the water. Yeah, very interesting. Somebody posted what that meant or what that phobia is in last week's HypnoTalk, so please check that out. But I want to talk anxiety.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on how your healing art really addresses that, pulling the root out of the weeds? Remember the weeds analogy. Pulling that root out of anxiety.
Let me first say that there are different types of anxiety, and the anxiety we're going to be talking about today is the very general run-of-the-mill, not the type of worrying or obsessive thought type that we all do. We're not talking about something that's a clinical diagnosis by a psychological professional. Although I do help with that, but I work in tandem with psychotherapists on that. But I'm talking about the kind of anxiety that you might have if you're getting ready to give a speech. Okay, it feels just as crap as someone who has a full-blown anxiety disorder, or the type of anxiety where you're staring at your phone and you're waiting for that text message to come, or the type of anxiety where you're worrying about what's going to happen with your job, or just the typical normal stuff that goes on. The type of anxiety that feels like hunger, that you eat too much to try to anesthetize. So, yes.
So that's an interesting one. Let's go back to that one, because you mentioned a few before, giving a speech, maybe even fear of heights. you have a physiological like reaction, spiders, that kind of stuff. Now, overeating, you're putting that into the same context, but the actual feelings and self-discovery of that is quite different.
Yeah. Well, separate from spiders and fear of heights are a little more along the lines of a phobia, and we deal with those differently. But when I started years ago as a hypnotherapist, I had people coming in for all kinds of stuff. You'd have someone coming in for biting their fingernails, and someone coming in to quit smoking, somebody else for sports performance. Someone had just gotten a divorce and they were upset and they needed to feel calm. But what happened under the surface, even the weight loss clients, is I found out that anxiety was there for everybody. It's like a common cause. So whether they were eating or smoking or biting their nails or avoiding or procrastinating, there was this common underlying cause of anxiety that a lot of people didn't even know they had. So, because sometimes it's just sort of a low grade resistance to the present moment. I'd really rather be shopping. I'd really rather be watching TV. I'd really rather just make myself a drink and make it all go away. So it was under everything. So I found that I was dealing with that and finding out more about that and finding out more about what that person's life situation was like and what their thoughts about that were. Everybody's different. They have different things that go on or don't go on will trigger that anxiety. So find out what or who triggers your anxiety. And the more we talk about it, the more I'd find out that they'd start talking about their mom or their dad, or they'd start remembering about a past relationship or a moment when they stood up to speak in kindergarten and some kids laughed at them and they lost their confidence, or we'd go to those incidents and we clean those up in hypnosis. We would also help to rid them of their worried self-talk.
So you're saying that perhaps in some of these circumstances, the epicenter of this anxiety happened perhaps years ago, and the who or what that triggers this anxiety is a memory, not even anyone in their present context today.
Yeah. And even the triggers may have started years ago, but anxiety is usually more future oriented. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because the underlying beliefs, like if I could only look better, then I wouldn't be anxious. I'd feel calm when I go to that class reunion, right? So that's a belief. And you might be right. It may be that if you lost 30 pounds and had a couple $100,000 worth of plastic surgery, maybe, just maybe, you'd walk in and feel a little calmer. But that is like an alcoholic taking a drink. It's not getting, we want to, of course, have our goals to be the best we can be, but but it's a better goal to just be comfortable in your own skin, right? To feel like you're enough, to feel completely relaxed, even if those people are maybe not including you. Maybe those were the kids that tease you when you're little, and there they are as adults and they're still assholes. And you walk into the class reunion and they're still doing their,
You're like, there's that guy again in his clique.
What if you could just enjoy the party anyway? Now, no, we're not doing parties right now, but eventually we will. So whatever type of anxiety it is, back to the future, an anxious chronic feeling is usually thinking about some future event that hasn't happened yet. And it's the gap between the present moment and the future event. And there's usually an underlying belief that says, as soon as X and such happens, then I can feel calm. As soon as I lose the weight, I'll be comfortable at the class reunion. As soon as COVID goes away, then I can feel relaxed about my physical health and the well-being of my family. As soon as I get that job, then I can be okay. And so it's a future, it's a mind form that's centered around the future and not the present moment.
And you're not addressing, or the person is not addressing the underlying issue, which is this anxiety trigger. Same as your concept the last week with the weed. By saying, okay, if I lose this weight, then I'll be popular. That's pulling the leaves off the weed, not pulling the weed out of the ground.
Yeah. And I mean, we can still want to lose weight and look good. Who doesn't want that? And, you know, win lots of friends with your bunny sweater. I mean, come on. Who wouldn't want to
I
do
love that. Yes, yes.
You know, I mean,
Very,
it's fun
very
to be cool,
awesome.
but you want to be okay. Even if you get on a Zoom call and your hair is fried and frizzed out, you still want to be okay, right?
Yeah.
You still want to feel like you're worthy enough to open your mouth and speak, and maybe your opinions are a little off the mainstream. You still want to be able to be who you are. Dr. Seuss always said, be who you are and say what you feel. Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
I love that.
Isn't that brilliant?
That Dr. Seuss. I love that guy. Great guy. But that's very, very relevant to what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And so we come to conclusions like that, like, oh, wouldn't it be better to just feel comfortable in your own skin now? But you know, there's a lot of people who don't realize there's a subconscious. Hypnosis is a subconscious tool. Subconsciously, they're addicted and actually enjoy the anxiety. Now, consciously, they hate it.
Right.
Hate it. And they'll say, I do not enjoy my anxiety, but they fear losing it. They think they need it. They think they need it to motivate themselves to lose that weight or stop drinking, or, you know, if I'm not worrying about this, then what's going to motivate me? I'm just going to sit on the couch and eat nothing but Oreos for the rest of the month.
I like Oreos.
So then we have to do some work to, again, bring them back to knowing that the kind of motivation that makes wanting to feel comfortable in your own skin valuable, the way you want to feel when you go to the beach, run around, have the energy to do the things you want to do, dress creatively, whatever, you know, whatever it happens to be, those motivations are still going to be there, but the person doesn't know that because they've been oriented to negative motivation. We want to reassure them that positive motivation has always been there. It's just been bombarded with fear, and that's been the predominant go-to of their subconscious. Now, once they're willing consciously in what we call the pre-talk to take on this new strategy that I talked to them about, and they agreed to, once they've agreed to it and see it and get it, then in hypnosis, we can do work to help them let go of the anxiety, let go of the fear. It is not useful. Anxiety does not make you skinny in the long run, and it certainly doesn't make you sharper. You know, how many people take tests and have butterflies in their stomach? The butterflies in your stomach don't make you sharper, but a lot of people think they will. It's like adrenaline, you know, so then they feel like I'm up, I'm ready to go.
Now,
okay.
That might be good if you're, you know, the starting quarterback of a Super Bowl team to get that initial adrenaline and that rush.
Mm-hmm.
But really, a successful quarterback calms down during the game and slows the game down. I love sports analogies.
I know you do.
No different than I get nervous.
Last week.
It was baseball, and this week it's football. So what's it going to be next week? Golf, maybe? I don't know.
There you go.
I get nervous just before a speech or before I go and address a room of people. And it's a great feeling. Mm-hmm. And then I get into it, and it's as if I'm talking to one person.
Yeah.
not anxious, not so. Could we say if somebody's amped up on anxiousness all the time, that's really their health is suffering. I would say that maybe their life of what they are creating is suffering. Um, I'm sure you've seen clients who have come in that this is the case.
Yes, meditation is a great tool once a person gets to the place where they can meditate. When I became a hypnotherapist, if someone told me to sit down and meditate and I'd really try, and I was crawling out of my skin, man. I was just a hot mess of a meditator. That actually was a great thing though, because it got me interested in hypnotherapy. Because in hypnotherapy, when it was guided and someone was telling me what to focus on, I was able to focus. And so now I can meditate and I enjoy it. And now more times than not, when my timer goes off, I'll go, wow, that's that. I don't want to stop this, and I'll put the timer on again. It's the exact opposite of what I used to be like.
Time goes quick.
Yeah. Yeah, but even that, there's a part of the brain that's kind of hardwired toward fight or flight. But let's say a person was a little panicky right before a big speech or right before they got up on the tee box on the golf course. You'd want to reframe that word anxiety as excitement. Because it is when you're on a roller coaster.
Yes.
And it's the same internal experience, but the word excitement has a lot more positive punch to it than the word anxiety does. And then it's having that moment, we can imagine anything in our minds. If I told, it doesn't have to be real. So if I said, hey, Troy, close your eyes and imagine you see a horse that's the same color as your shirt running across the beach with a rainbow striped tail.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, some people aren't visual and they'll go, oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that. Well, me either. Some people can, some people not so much. But I can, if I can close my eyes, I may not see a horse that's pink with a rainbow striped tail running across the beach very clearly. But I'm thinking about one, and I could imagine the temperature of the water, the smell of the ocean, and the sensation of the spray after a wave crashes splashing up against my legs. I could imagine that and feel the feeling of my feet in the sand. I can even get a sense of the quality of the air. If it's not very dry at the beach, it's a little bit of a moister air with the sea breeze. I can hear in my mind, I'm very, very easy to hear things. I can hear waves crashing. I can hear seagulls and stuff and pelicans. I can.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Last week you were howling at the moon. This week it's seagulls.
Yeah,
I love
or
seagulls.
sea lions or seals.
Oh yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area, so I love seagulls and sea lions and all those types of marine life. I love those guys.
I love sharks. I love them.
I like sharks too.
You're like, oh God, what do I do with that? I've got people on my swim team that are better swimmers than I have ever been, who I have hypnotized so that we can do ocean swims in the ocean because they have a fear of sharks.
Yes.
And a fear of sharks is really common, and you'd be amazed at how many people have a fear of sharks that are swimmers that swim in the ocean anyway, and they just steel themselves to do it. But you can tell that in their heads, they're hearing the theme song from Jaws as they're going. And they're kind of using that to swim faster. But that's not a good motivation.
I think that movie, Jaws, has created anxiety for millions and millions of people when it comes to swimming in the ocean. Like, I never think of a shark in the ocean, actually.
No.
And generally, they're not. And they generally don't like people either. So if you're thinking of this, the odds of you basically going out your door and you know, something breaking your leg is a lot greater than being eaten by a shark.
Struck by lightning. It's
Yeah.
nuts. And yeah, but the hypnotic power, now when you're in the movies, right, that's hypnotic because you're in a deep theta brainwave state. That's why when you saw Jaws, and I saw Jaws back in, God, when did it come out? 1973 or
70s,
4?
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw it I saw it downtown Manhattan Beach at the Lamar Theater, which is the town I lived in. And when we walked out the door of the theater afterwards, and we were
There's
just
a beach
white
right
with
there.
fear, there was the
Yeah.
ocean, and I was like, oh God, you know, it affected people like crazy to this day. But that's hypnosis. That's how powerful it is. I use it. If it can make a person anxious, it can also be a tool to make a person not anxious. And it can be as powerful in a calming way and lasting in a calming way as the imagery of a shark and the whole, I think we're going to need a bigger boat thing was for those. So the power of the subconscious mind is that strong that people that saw that movie in the 70s, some of them still can't go in the water. And it was a movie. And people say that the statistics show that you're safe in the water. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I've seen small leopard sharks. I've seen hammerheads. I've seen things like that. Small. They could kill. When I see them, I like to dive down and take a closer look. They're so beautiful.
Yeah, they're not going to eat you.
No.
A hammer. Yeah.
No. And people, oh, I could never do that. Well, no one was afraid of sharks on the West Coast like that back before that movie came out. So I love it because that movie, in a negative way, really shows the power of hypnotic suggestion.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So for you movie producers out there that want to really scare the crap out of people, you might want to get our friendly hypnotherapist over here to consult with you on how to do that in your movie.
Yeah.
That could be a game changer for sure.
I like to pull that stuff out in hypnosis. We can do stuff where we can literally pull it out.
Yeah. For me, it was Freddy Krueger.
When an anxiety or a fear has been pulled out, people will start crying with relief right in the chair. They'll just be like, you know, and it's a tremendous relief of, wow, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
I will still not go into a boiler room because of Freddy Krueger.
Well, Freddy Krueger is a whole different. No, it's not.
Same thing. Shark, Freddy Krueger.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this is, again, very, very good conversation around anxiety. If anybody has questions, leave some questions down below. We'll get to them throughout the week. Let's leave our viewers with a tip.
Okay.
We're all about tips and tools and all that kind of stuff. Now, you did talk through meditation. What would be another tool that somebody could take away with them to at least manage a bit of their anxiety if they have anxiety around, certain things?
I would say, do not believe what your mind tells you. Your mind is not your friend. It will tell you it's dangerous to go in the water. Don't do that. You could get eaten. Your mind is completely out to lunch. It doesn't know. The feelings as a human being that come up from those inner hypnotic suggestions, every single thing you say to yourself is a hypnotic suggestion. You are your own hypnotherapist. If you're telling yourself, he's going to leave me, this country is going to hell in a handbasket, I'll never get another job, No one will ever love me again. And your mind says this stuff. Your mind is not your friend. Every time you indulge in that, it hypnotizes it in. That's why it
Oh,
feels so bad. And when it feels bad, that means your mind says that's because it's true. If it wasn't true, you wouldn't have that anxiety attack. That must mean something's wrong. And it's a vicious cycle. So start to notice the stuff your mind tells you. You could even write it down. And then don't feed it with your attention. You will not talk yourself out of it. The thoughts will continue to show up. You can't stop the mind, but you can become conscious that the mind is not your friend. And just because it says something doesn't mean it's true. And once you separate out and you go, I don't have to believe that. Now you've created some space between you and the thought. Be careful not to argue with the thought. It feeds it. And the thought will win. It will win every time because your attention feeds it. All you have to do is notice that there's a thought. You won't know if it's real or not real. You won't know if things are going to turn out the way you want them to or differently. You'll never know that because that's the future. If your mind is trying to predict the future, don't go there. Be present. Easier said than done. Hypnosis helps. I ground people in hypnosis into the present moment so that the subconscious knows that the only safe place is the present moment, not the future, that they're not going to lose all their common sense. The mind doesn't want you to be present. It's like a fearful entity in its own right. It has its own energy field. We want to get into the metaphysics of it. And it's not a happy energy field. So just because an energy field exists doesn't mean you have to plug into it with your attention.
true. Very good tip. Actually, what I'm hearing is a person that wants to really get into this idea of self-discovery and what is this voice saying? I like that you said, write it down. Write down what these conversations, these words, these thoughts are, and then discover what's going on in this thing here.
Yeah.
And then perhaps the next step, I'm hearing hypnosis is a great methodology to use to shift that conversation. But then, really self-discover those conversations that your own mind is having, and then work either in hypnosis or meditation or some other modality to shift that conversation.
Yeah. And don't be shy about reaching out for help. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, but to get that stuff to start to snowball the right direction, I think it really is. It's been very important for me to reach out and get someone else to sound some of these ideas off of and to hypnotize me. I've had great experiences with that, and it's given me the leverage to get on top of it. I always think of ocean analogies. When I'm anxious, or we used to be, it's like getting hit by a wave, which is fine. You can take it. You're tumbled around. You come up for air, and before you can breathe, another one hits you and takes you out. And the set's coming in so hard and so fast, you're just getting knocked down. And after a while, there's this, oh man, how am I ever going to get out of this? And so we can kind of get those waves to space out so that we can come up for a breath and dive and just let it pass through. Come up for a breath, dive, and let it pass through, and just kind of work with this thing and get some leverage over it, so we're not just getting beaten to death, taking it on the head every second. So
that is a very good analogy, ocean analogy, and definitely spot on. And I do like our theme of water. This is a good themed show.
I use water. We need to do a show on archetypal imagery. I use archetypal imagery all the time. So water works. There's different types of hypnotic processes that I use, since the mind works in pictures and sensory things. So we're in an experience. A lot of times I'll have the water pull out something.
I remember we touched on it briefly last week, was imagery. We did talk through that kind of stuff, but maybe that's our next episode, is on the imagery.
I would love to talk more about imagery. Imagery is perfect. The favorite tool I have in the toolbox is therapeutic imagery.
I love it. And
you don't have to be visual to have an imagery session. It'll work even if you're not visual.
And I have a visual joke for you, seeing that, we're going to wrap this, but let's end with a bit of humor. Imagine a shark wearing parachute pants. What do you call a shark that wears parachute pants?
I don't know, Troy. What do you call a shark?
MC Hammerhead. I learned that one from Siri.
That's good. Siri gave you that.
Alexa, sorry. Siri. Alexa. And I just jinxed everybody who has an Alexa now. Alexa's listening to you right now. I did a faux pas. I said that word. Anyway. Thank you. This is very, very enlightening about anxiety and hypnotherapy. And perhaps next week we'll talk imagery. So you want to get a notification when we're doing these, click on the subscribe button below. Now we do these every week, Sunday at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Janna. This was lovely. And enjoy the rest of your Easter.
Yes, you too.
I will. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Peace.